And now for the latest from Washington, we're joined by our correspondent Daniel Rinches. Well, Daniel, one of the U.S. allies, the U.K. now says that it will wait for the investigation results to be submitted to the UN Security Council before it makes any decision. Meanwhile, Syrian President Bashar al-Assad has also announced that Syria will definitely defend itself against any aggression. So are there fears that the U.S. may be dragged into another Iraq?
I think that that's very unlikely. The Obama administration has very clearly signaled that this is not about regime change or about changing the basic dynamics of the military conflict between the two parties in Syria. That this is about the use of chemical weapons, and therefore they are indicating very strongly that if they decide to initiate any strikes, they are with the sole purpose of trying to disincentivize anybody, not only in Syria, but in the region, from using chemical weapons again. So these goals are extremely narrow, and there seems to be politically in Washington very little desire in the administration, and certainly some on Capitol Hill, to make it anything like a major intervention like in Iraq or indeed as in Libya.
Well, U.S. President Barack Obama on Wednesday declared that the United States has already concluded that the Syrian government carried out a deadly chemical attack last week. So is there any evidence to back his assertions, or is it like back in Iraq where claims of Iraq owning weapons of mass destruction were totally false?
The latest evidence that we have comes from the Associated Press, who's been talking to administration officials who, though think it's likely that the Assad regime was responsible for the chemical weapons attack recently, they also have some doubts about the quality of the intelligence that they have received. Specifically, they have some doubts about whether they can prove that either President Assad or any senior officials knew about the chemical weapons attack. They also, according to the Associated Press, have some doubts about the chain of custody of some chemical weapons in the country. Let's not forget, it's very chaotic. The rebels have taken areas, the governments have taken areas at different times. The US has conducted multiple aerial surveillance, and they've tried to track the chemical weapons as they've moved around the country. But according to the Associated Press, intelligence officials have by no means complete certainty about the exact custody of all the chemical weapons in the country. So what you're seeing right now is a dialing back of the level of certainty that was expressed not only by Vice President Biden, but also by Secretary of State John Kerry only a few days ago, to suggest that they were absolutely certain that the Syrian government knew and carried out this attack. So we are seeing more uncertainty here in Washington. But I think that is also tempered by the fact that the State Department yesterday said, even if Assad didn't know about this, it's still clear that Assad was generally responsible, being the commander-in-chief of the country. Therefore, we hold him responsible. Politically, there is some pressure on President Obama to respond in some way, but most expect that to be probably just a few strikes, missile strikes that will not leave American boots on the ground, that will not even have an aerial presence within the Syrian airspace. So we're looking at a situation that is deeply uncertain at this time.
Right. Thank you so much for that, Daniel. Appreciate it. Our correspondent Daniel Rinches reporting from Washington, D.C.